You're tuned in to Women in America, the podcast that dives deep into the issues shaping gender equality in the US and beyond. Hosted by Pari and Eve, public health professionals by day and content creators by passion, we bring you expert insights and actionable strategies to push the fight for equality forward in today's America. On this episode, we speak with Jessica Craven on how the government is creating death panels by using AI to process Medicare claims. Let's dive in. Everybody, today I have with us Rep. Seth Magaziner, and he is going to be talking to us about the impending government shutdown and all of the things that's happening around that so that we can get an insider look into what's been going on in the halls of Congress. Rep. Magaziner, thank you so much for being here today. Tell us about how, first of all, you're emotionally feeling in this moment and then professionally feeling in this moment.
Emotionally and professionally, I am feeling determined.
Oh, good.
Like determined to fight for the health care of the American people. That's what's at stake in all of this.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I think for folks at home, we've been getting like headlines that feel like it's changing every day. As recently as yesterday, the president met with senior officials in both parties, and last week there was whispers that perhaps the Democrats were going to give in, and then that changed almost immediately. So would you mind just giving us an overview of where we stand right now? Like few hours before the midnight deadline. What's the
Sure.
situation? And what do you feel like is the pulse among your colleagues about whether or not this is looking likely?
Well, let me set the stage by saying why we're here. The reason we're here is that there is a healthcare crisis in this country. And the reason that there is a healthcare crisis is because Republicans in Congress and Donald Trump have been taking more than $1 trillion out of the healthcare system and just wreaking havoc. So we are now about to enter what's called an open enrollment period, where people can sign up for health insurance. And what people are finding is that their health insurance cost, the cost to pay, for their health insurance, is going to go up by double digits or even triple digits next year. So in Rhode Island, where I'm from, in my state, people are seeing increases of up to 22% if they are on commercial insurance like Blue Cross or United. And if they get their insurance from the exchanges, it could be even more. And like people are already struggling with high costs. Like the cost of living is too high already. And to have these huge increases in healthcare costs, a lot of people just can't take it. And they're not going to sign up for insurance. They're going to let themselves go uninsured, which is bad for people's health, but also bad for the economy. Why is this happening? It's happening because over the summer, the Republicans passed this big bad bill that took $1 trillion out of the healthcare system, out of Medicaid. Now they want to take even more out of the healthcare system by letting funding for the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, expire at the end of the year. And so our position as Democrats is we're saying, no, if you want our votes to pass a budget, you have to include funding for healthcare to fix this so that people don't see the healthcare system thrown into turmoil and people don't lose their insurance and have to pay more. And the difference between now and over the summer when Republicans passed that $1 trillion cut to Medicaid to cut all that money from healthcare to pay for tax cuts for the rich, back then they could do that with a simple majority under the rules of Congress. They didn't need our votes.
Hmm.
This time, however, under the rules, they need at least 7 or 8 Democratic votes in order to get a budget passed. And so again, like our position is we want to pass a budget, we want to keep the government open, we want to do all the things, but it has to include a healthcare fix, and our vote is not free. And Republicans are just giving people a false choice right now. They're saying, well, either let us cut billions of dollars from healthcare or the government's going to shut down. That's the choice they're offering everyone. But we don't have to settle for that choice. Like that's a bad choice. Like we don't have to settle for that. Instead, we can say, no, we'll pass a budget and we'll fund healthcare. Both. It doesn't have to be either or. So it's a long answer, but your original question was like, where do things stand now? You're not going to believe this. But where things stand now is that because Republicans haven't worked with us to pass a budget, the government is about to shut down at midnight tonight. And not only are Republicans not coming to the table to work with us to solve this crisis, they're actually not even here in Washington at all. The House Republicans are on vacation. They are home in their districts or elsewhere around the world on vacation. The Democrats are here. We've all come back, even though the Republicans canceled session this week. We are here. We are ready to do the work, solve the healthcare crisis, prevent a shutdown. But the Republicans literally are on vacation right now when the clock is ticking and we are hours away from this crisis. So that's where we
I
are.
just before we got on this call, actually, I saw a video inside the House chamber, or sorry, it was a photo inside the House chamber with like the Democratic half of the room full and the Republican half empty. And I'm laughing not because it's funny, but because this is just my coping mechanism now. It's like, oh, this is sort of where we've come to. It's like the country is still talking about, oh, like what is the government going to shut down? Are a bunch of people going to potentially lose money, get unemployed, lose healthcare? And turns out the Republicans are already like peace because they've already started their version
Yeah.
of their shutdown, right? So like want to emphasize two things you said is that one of the things that I often find as like someone with progressive values in this country is that like Democrats right now are being blamed by Republicans and blamed by the president for not coming through on this. But the super like intense irony of that whole situation is that the reason why go Democrats aren't quote unquote coming through is because they're actually taking a stand and like as we say, standing on business for everybody's healthcare. Like truly
Yeah.
imagine like I don't know how the Republicans have managed to spin this narrative around this concept of like, oh, well, it's $1 trillion or the government shuts down because what
Yeah.
they've done with that trillion is given it to like the ultra wealthy in this country that already have multi-billions.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to highlight in what you said was this concept that like people's healthcare costs are about to increase, as of January 1st, 2026. And I say that because, we've been talking a lot about this on our channel, and we are realizing because of that and because of polling data that actually people don't necessarily know that that's coming.
Yeah.
They're about to be hit on New Year's Day with this like massive bill. And let's be real, exactly like you said, it's not like that's the only bill of theirs that's going to increase. Like everything else in life is also getting more expensive. And we're sitting here just listening to all of these like crafted messaging. And then Trump is bragging this morning about how he's going to lay off a bunch of federal workers if the government does shut down, as if like that's an additional threat. And I'm sitting here being like, well, you don't even need an excuse to do that. You've already done that like tons and tons of
Yeah.
times. So I guess what I'm building to with this is were there more asks from the Democrats than just the $1 trillion in healthcare initially that you've now like whittled down to being like, okay, this is our core because this is like the people we really care about. This is what we need to happen, or has it been over healthcare the whole time?
So we've made healthcare the priority for us in this budget fight because, again, like so many people are going to be hurt by these sky high increases to health insurance costs. People are not going to be able to afford it. People are going to have to go without insurance entirely. It's not be able to go get the care they need, not be able to get care for their family members. So we've made this our priority. But it's not the only thing that's on the table. We've also been pushing to restore funding for medical research, which was cut by Elon Musk and Donald Trump earlier in the year. And then also another issue that's on the table, we don't talk about this publicly as much because it's a little in the weeds, but it's important, is we need language in the budget that says if Congress comes together and we pass a budget, the administration actually has to follow it. And the president can't just say, no, I don't want to, fund this program. I don't want to fund that office. Like when Congress passes a budget, it is supposed to be the law, and the executive branch's job, the president's job, is to deliver the money, not to have you know, decide to freelance and decide what to fund and what not to fund. And so we're going to need some assurances in the budget as well that if we pass a budget that they actually will honor it. Um, so those are some of the things that are at play here. You mentioned, Republicans trying to blame Democrats for this. Like that's absurd. And I don't think the American people are buying it. You see it in the polling when people are asked, who would you blame if the government shuts down? Disproportionately, people blame the Republicans. Why? Because people know that the Republicans control every branch of government right now. They
Yeah.
control the House, the Senate, and the White House. And also, by the way, they're the ones who skipped town instead of staying here to do their job right before the government was set to shut down. So I don't think that this Republican blame game is going to work. They also know that they have a real issue with the expiration of this Affordable Care Act funding and the healthcare costs going up on the American people. What's interesting, you probably saw this yesterday when JD Vance went out to the microphones to talk about all of this. He said that he and Trump actually thought that the Democrats had good ideas on the healthcare part. He was like, yeah, like actually, like the president thought that like the Democrats had some reasonable ideas on healthcare. Their argument is not that they don't want to do the right thing on healthcare. What they're saying is, oh no, just like we'll deal with it later. Just
Mhm.
like pass a budget for the next few weeks, and we'll deal with the healthcare thing later. But they have no credibility. They're the same people who just cut $1 trillion out of Medicaid and who were going to let the Affordable Care Act funding expire until we force the issue. And they want us to just like trust them that they're going to deal with this later? No way. So,
Yeah, plus this has happened before. I mean, like a
yeah,
couple of months ago, they were threatening the same thing too, and at the time, Democrats played ball, and it's like, okay, well,
yeah,
now we're learning from that lesson. And I think that, when it comes to the Republican blame game, what I think is intriguing about that situation is that like there is a built-in audacity that comes with saying that it's someone else's fault when you own every branch of government,
that's
right?
right.
Like, and I mean, I've always known, like, I work in reproductive health. Republicans are nothing short of audacious on a good day, but I'm curious, like, this is just a personal question. Like, how do you sort of maintain your sanity and like your your wherewithal when you're in the room with folks who are arguing against the most basic common sense things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I just always try to remind myself like who I'm here for, like who I'm fighting for. I am here for that like single parent in Rhode Island who's wondering how she's going to pay the bills for her kids. Like I am here for like that guy on the construction site who, is like feeling pain and knows that he needs help, but isn't sure that he can afford to go in and get the care that he needs. Like that, like the seniors who are trying to live on a fixed income. And like you find motivation when you ground yourself in who you're fighting for. And this is like a tough, tough time, like a heavy time. And I get that. I feel that. Um, we're not going to win every battle, but every battle is worth fighting. And if we fight, we can win a lot of them. I hear a lot back home people saying, like we wish like the Democrats could do more. They wish the Democrats would like fight harder. But like in my view, like this fight right now to save the healthcare of the American people, this is the right fight at the right moment, and it's one that we have to win. And I at least am prepared to do whatever it takes to make sure that we deliver a win for the American people on this.
You said that one of the things that you don't message about as much is the part about like needing assurances that
Yeah.
the president is going to follow through on what Congress does. Would you mind like speaking a little bit more to that? Because I think that, in my read as someone who makes content online and speaks a lot with lawmakers, one of the things that is like really sort of top of mind for the American public is like the fact that the last 9 months, 8 months, have made clear to us that the checks and balances that are supposed to act as checks and balances are not really functioning
Yeah.
that way because there's no honoring of those checks and balances. And so, if you are like thinking about potentially like writing it into this bill or like the new, whatever it is, tell me a little bit about like why do you think that that's going to need to be a norm from now on or like basically what I'm
Yeah.
saying is Can we still rely on constitutional processes, or have we reached a stage now where we have to sort of reinforce those processes every opportunity that we get?
Well, that obviously, I mean, this was all supposed to be settled like decades ago. Again, not to be super technical here, but like the term is impoundment, the idea that Congress passes a budget and the president can just be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to deliver the money to this hospital or this program or whatever. And back in the 1970s, Richard Nixon tried to do that, and the Supreme Court said no, like under the Constitution, it's Congress that writes the budget, and then the president's job is to deliver the money, not to, do anything different. And now Trump is trying to challenge that again and say that he has, absolute power as our, dictator in chief to just ignore Congress and do whatever he wants with the money. Um, that's working its way back through the courts, but like with this Supreme Court, you can't trust that they're going to honor the Constitution. They are loyal, it appears, first and foremost to Donald Trump. And so, yeah, I think that part of what has got to be negotiated here is we have to have language in the actual law, in the budget, that would put penalties or withhold funding or withhold authority from the president if he does not deliver the funding that is in the budget that is signed into law. And so, uh, I know that our leadership has ideas for how to write language like that, but just taking Donald Trump's word for it is not going to be enough.
No, it should it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
If anyone's actually trying to get anything done, then you can't rely on that. For the $1 trillion in healthcare that we are currently negotiating, I'm saying we as in just like on behalf of the public. What is the response of your Republican colleagues to that? Like, are they still sort of going into that narrative where they're like, "Oh, this is for illegals," or have they since changed their tune because the public response to the big bullshit bill was much more
Yeah.
negative than I think they anticipated, right?
Yeah. So what they're saying publicly is different than what they're saying privately, right?
Hmm.
Surprise, surprise. So publicly, their answer has been, oh, the Democrats want to give money to people who are here illegally. The Democrats want to fund, transgender surgery for young people or whatever. Like
Right,
all of
made
which
up
is
things.
right, right. Because like their whole mode is to deflect to like those like culture issues. And it doesn't seem to bother them that like what they're saying is a lie. So like already under existing law, people who are here who are undocumented do not get Medicaid benefits
Hmm.
or Affordable Care Act tax credits. Like that is not a thing that exists in the real world. And same thing again, like gender affirming care for adults is one thing that's a state by state decision, but like there aren't states out there that are doing that surgeries for minors for gender affirming care. Like again, like they are lying, they are like trying to deflect publicly. Privately, like they know they have a problem here.
Mm.
Like Donald Trump's numbers are underwater. His popularity is like more than 10 points underwater. But on healthcare, he's underwater by like 20 plus percent. Like people do not like just like you said, like people do not like this bill they passed over the summer that guts Medicaid. They do not trust Trump and the Republicans on healthcare. They trust the Democrats much more. And they support the Affordable Care Act, which the Republicans are now trying to let lapse. So, like privately, the Republicans know they have a problem here, but they take their marching orders from Donald Trump and they're waiting for Trump to tell them what to do. I think where we will hopefully land here is that relatively soon Trump will decide this is not the fight that is the advantageous one for him to be in. So he will direct Mike Johnson and John Thune to come to the table and hammer something out with us. I do think that will happen. The question is like, as is always the case with Trump, like what kind of theatrics and BS are we going to have to put up with in the meantime before that happens, and how disruptive is it going to be?
And also, if not this, then what will he decide is like the fight that he wants to take up next, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a constant question. I think one aspect of the conversation that's kind of getting lost naturally because we have the impending shutdown, but one aspect of the conversation that's getting lost in the whole like shutdown conversation is the fact that the big bullshit bill, which is what I call it, is already starting to have effect.
Yeah.
Like, we have seen rural hospitals start to close already, and it's been less than like 6 months since that
Yeah.
bill was signed. I'm thinking most notably of Georgia, where they've already had three rural hospitals close their OBGYN and mother-child units because they don't feel like they can
Mm.
afford to offer that care anymore. And I bring that up because, you were like kicking it back to your constituents in Rhode Island and saying like that you always think of them when you're fighting this fight. And I want to like get you to help me emphasize to people that when you cut, let's say, $1 trillion worth of healthcare for a certain proportion of Americans, it does not only affect that proportion of
Yes.
Americans, right? Right? Like if rural hospitals are closing, that means the burden on the hospitals that now are left are is that much higher than it used to be before. And so I think that what you're doing is like talking about the ACA, but what we need to be doing as a collective is like, this isn't actually just for the few people that are on this.
Correct. That's 100% right. And something that I think we need to be doing a better job getting the word out about is exactly that. When Republicans cut money from Medicaid or money from the Affordable Care Act, it drives up healthcare costs for everyone and decreases healthcare access for everyone. Exactly for the reason you just said. And by the way, not just rural hospitals, but nursing homes are closing down already all across the country because of this. Um, when you cut all of that money, cut people off of Medicaid, cut people off of the ACA, that also, in addition to being bad for those people, it means less revenue for healthcare providers. It means less revenue for those rural hospitals, for nursing homes, for doctors' practices. And so if you're trying to run a community health center or a nursing home or a rural hospital and you're losing all this revenue, you've got two choices. Like your two choices are either go out of business or raise prices on everybody else. And that's what's happening here. Like when we say that everyone's health insurance costs are about to go up next year, that's not just the people on Medicaid or on the exchange, that's everybody. And the reason is that hospitals, nursing homes, et cetera, are raising prices on everybody else in order to stay afloat.
Mhm.
And, and that's something that the Republicans just can't run away from, right? Like they passed the big bad bill or big bullshit bill. Like it was, first of all, the bill was never popular, and they passed it on a slim party line vote. But the way that they tried to sell it to people was to be like, oh, we're only taking away healthcare from people who don't need it, from, people who aren't able-bodied, people who are playing video games or whatever. But they can't run away from the fact that everybody's health insurance costs are about to go up, starting with open enrollment tomorrow. They can't run away from that. And that's why, like, despite all of their public posturing, a lot of them privately, when I talk to them, they know they have a problem on this. And that's why I think ultimately we're going to win this showdown with them. Um,
Well, speaking
you
of
know,
not letting Republicans run away from it, I would love if you closed us out by telling us like assuming the government does shut down in a couple of hours, what should everybody, every average American be doing to get the Republicans to stop that situation?
Well, first of all, tell these Republican members of Congress to come back to Washington to start. I mean, and give them an earful about the fact that while the government is about to shut down, they're on vacation instead of being on duty here in Washington. And then second, tell them that they need to extend the Affordable Care Act funding. Plain and simple. Like there's an easy solution here. It's a solution that is broadly supported by the American people. It's popular. It's the right thing to do. Like tell them to come here, do their job, and restore the funding. And so call their offices. Call if you're represented by a Republican, like call their office, and if you're not, then call the Speaker of the House's office. Like put the pressure on them, and continue to get on social media, amplify these voices, but make sure that people understand, like we as Democrats, we were very deliberate about picking this fight at this time. This is not a fight about nothing. This is not a, fight. We're not doing this just for the sake of doing this. We are doing this because open enrollment starts tomorrow. People's healthcare costs are going to go up significantly. center that in the conversation, center that in the messaging. And I know that healthcare is a big issue for you always. So this is a perfect venue for us to be having this conversation. But I tell everyone back home, like, amplify the message that Republicans need to fix this healthcare crisis now.
Those are two super clear calls to action. Thank you so much, Rep. Magaziner. Appreciate you, and good luck in the next several hours. We will be rooting for you and tracking everything that's coming out of Congress. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Women in America. If you enjoyed it, share it with your network and follow us on social media at women_in America. See you next week.